WFLA Now will begin momentarily. WFLA Now will begin momentarily. Live from the Stream Center in Tampa, Florida. Top stories, breaking news, interactive coverage in the palm of your hand. This is WFLA Now, powered by 1-800-ASK-GARY. Here's JB Buno.
A breakthrough 27 years in the making. One of the last living witnesses to the fatal drive-by shooting of rapper Tupac Shakur, charged with murder with use of a deadly weapon in the 1996 killing. News that is sending shockwaves through the internet. Police moments away from a press conference that will be carrying live here on WFLA Now. Hello there to you folks. One word to begin this live stream. Wow. 27 years later, we have an arrest in the murder of Tupac Shakur. Of course, the name, we're carrying it for you on WFLA.com. You can click on the link in the description on this video to get to all the details in our story that we are updating even as we speak, as new details come in to the Stream Center. But let's go to that article right now on WFLA.com. And the name, of course, is not going to surprise many because this is the name that has been tied to Tupac's death going back many, many years. A Nevada grand jury indicting Dwayne Keefe D. Davis in the killing, according to prosecutors. I'm making the announcement in court Friday. Keefe D. has been indicted. The charges revealed just hours after the 60-year-old man was arrested, according to two law enforcement officials with firsthand knowledge of the arrest. Everyone is kind of staying quiet up until the 3:30 press conference that has been scheduled. We are going to be carrying that press conference as soon as it begins. Here in the Stream Center, I'm keeping, of course, close eye on several monitors here, but we're going to pay close attention to the one where we are going to be getting that feed of that press conference when it does, in fact, get underway in just a few moments from now. But welcome in. If you use hashtag HeyJB, you can, of course, have your comment featured on screen. And let's see if we can start to get some of the comments going here. Might just take a moment to load up. But again, if you use hashtag HeyJB on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live, WFLA.com, WFLA's app, we can feature your comment on screen. But we know many of you are still filing in. If you're looking for the press conference, we will be having it shortly. We're just waiting for that feed to actually activate. I know that there's shock in our comment section. There's shock elsewhere on social media as well. Let's see if we can get our... Let's see here. Let's see if we can get our chat up and running again. I don't know exactly where our chat went, you guys. Let's see if we can fix that. Let's try it now. We'll get it working eventually. But I'll read some comments here in the meantime. Martin Fan for Life says, hashtag HeyJB, the saying is true. The wheels of justice turn slow. People asking others what their favorite Tupac songs are. If you have any favorite songs, I know that people were, as we were getting ready for our live stream, people were sharing that back and forth in our comment section. Of course, Tupac, one of the most iconic rappers of all time, really defined West Coast hip hop in the 90s, of course, before his untimely death. He was so young, you guys. He was in his 20s. Chosen Davis with this comment. saying hashtag HJB about time. King Meech says hashtag HJB. This is huge for the Black community. I'm sure that this is news that is especially if you remember where you were, and you were, of course, if you remember that day. That was, of course, an extremely sad day, not just in the entertainment world, but it reverberated, across the country. People who expressed profound sadness for the loss of Tupac Shakur. Let's get into some of the comments here as well. But again, I'm just waiting for things to get fixed here so I can animate your comments on screen. They're not animating yet, but we'll get there. Again, if you're just filing in, folks, we're waiting for the press conference to begin. We're waiting for the feed to become available. We will have it here as soon as it does, in fact, become available. Let's go back to some of the details on WFLA.com. Yeah, Davis's name is well known to people who have been following this case closely, really over the last 27 years, since 1996. Davis, of course, Keefe D. He admitted in interviews and in his 2019 memoir called Compton Street Legend that he was in the Cadillac from which the gunfire erupted in the September 1996 drive-by shooting. Again, Tupac just 25 years old when he was killed. Las Vegas police, they raided a home in mid-July, and this is what really set the stage for today. And really, I remember we were in our newsroom and we could not believe the news that was coming out of Las Vegas, where a home was being raided, and it was, according to authorities, in connection to the death of Tupac Shakur. It was in the Las Vegas suburb of Henderson, and it was tied to Keefe D. Police were looking for items concerning the murder of Tupac, according to the search warrant, and they collected multiple computers, a cell phone, a hard drive, a Vibe magazine that featured Tupac, several .40 caliber bullets, two what they called tubs containing photographs, and also to a copy of Keefe D's memoir. So we're still, of course, awaiting the press conference. If you're looking for it, it was supposed to begin, of course, a minute ago. I think members of the media, they're still filing in and still getting in position as far as the media availability and the press conference itself. So we'll carry it here as soon as that feed becomes available. Davis revealed in his memoir that he first broke his silence back in 2010 during a closed-door meeting with federal and local authorities. At the time, he was 46 years old. He was facing life in prison on drug charges when he agreed to speak with them about Tupac's killing, as well as the fatal shooting 6 months later of Tupac's rival, the Notorious B.I.G., or Biggie Smalls. He wrote in his book, here's a couple of excerpts, saying, "They offered to let me go for running a quote-unquote criminal enterprise and numerous alleged murders for the truth about the Tupac and Biggie murders. They promised they would shred the indictment and stop the grand jury if I helped them out." So that was kind of what set the stage. And again, this is going back 13 years to that initial meeting between Keefe D and federal and local authorities. Shakur, there was this well-known feud between the West Coast, East Coast feud in hip-hop at the time between really Tupac and Notorious B.I.G., Biggie Smalls, who they were very much, of course, the face of that feud. And Biggie Smalls was himself fatally shot just a little bit later in March of 1997. The rivalry, of course, was really the thing in hip-hop at the time in the mid-1990s. And the press conference feed has just come up. Let's listen in here live.
Thank you for joining us this afternoon. 27 years. 27 years. For 27 years, the family of Tupac Shakur has been waiting for justice. We are here today to announce the arrest of 60-year-old Dwayne Keith Davis, a.k.a. Keefe D, for the murder of Tupac Shakur. Davis was arrested this morning by my LVMPD criminal apprehension team, and this investigation started on the night of September 7th, 1996. It is far from over. It has taken countless hours, really decades, of work by the men and women of our homicide section to get to where we are today. Several of those detectives that are standing here with us include Detective Cliff Mogg, the lead detective on this case. He is now retired. While I know there's been many people who did not believe that the murder of Tupac Shakur was important to this police department, I'm here to tell you that was simply not the case. It was not the case back then, and it is not the case today. Our goal at LVMPD has always been to hold those accountable and responsible for Tupac's violent murder accountable. Just like we do for every homicide victim in our city. Every single victim, every life that is lost is important and remains a priority to this police department. As we methodically built this case to move forward with an arrest, it was also important that at the same time, we're building towards a successful prosecution. We work closely with our esteemed District Attorney, Steve Wolfson, in his office to ensure that is going to happen. Mr. Davis's own words reinvigorated our case in 2018. I'm going to give you some of those details, and I'm going to introduce to you our homicide lieutenant, Jason Johansson, and he will provide you many of the details on how we got here today. Lieutenant.
Thank you, Sheriff, and thank you, everybody, for being here today. My name is Jason Johansson, and I'm the homicide lieutenant with the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. And my goal here today is to walk you through our investigation and what led us to the indictment of Dwayne Davis, also known as Keefe D, for the murder of Tupac Shakur. This case has been reviewed by our homicide team and homicide detectives for over 2.5 decades. And ultimately, our persistence in this investigation has paid off. Let me walk you through a timeline of events that as we know them right now. Prior to September 7th of 1996, as we all know, Tupac Shakur was an artist who was signed with Death Row Records. And that Death Row Records and its CEO, Marion Suge Knight, were closely affiliated with the Mob Piru criminal street gangs, and that they had an ongoing feud with the Southside Compton Crips. Dwayne Davis was the leader and shot caller of the Southside Compton Crips. And both of these gangs operated out of the Southern California area of Compton. On the night of September 7th of 1996, Tupac Shakur, along with Suge Knight, and members of their entourage, which include members of Mob Piru, came to Vegas to attend the Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand Garden Arena. Members of the Southside Compton Crips, which included Dwayne Davis, along with his nephew Orlando Anderson, were also in attendance at the same event. As both were leaving the fight, members of Death Row Records spotted Orlando Anderson near an elevator bank inside the MGM, and at that time they began to kick and punch him near that elevator bank. I will now show you hotel security footage, as many of you have already seen, related to this incident. And on this incident, you will see Tupac Shakur, who's wearing a shiny satiny shirt, along with Marion Suge Knight, who's a large man in a brown suit, punching and kicking Orlando Anderson. Following this incident, you'll see hotel security intervene, and then they will leave the area of the fight. Little did anyone know that it is this incident right here that would ultimately lead to the retaliatory shooting and death of Tupac Shakur. Following this incident, Tupac and Suge Knight both left the MGM to make their way to a post-fight party, which was to occur at a local nightclub. At the same time, word had spread amongst members of the Southside Compton Crips of what had occurred inside the MGM. And then that's when Dwayne Davis began to devise a plan to obtain a firearm and retaliate against Suge Knight and Mr. Shakur for what occurred inside the hotel against Mr. Anderson. After Davis obtained a gun, he entered into a white Cadillac along with Terrence Brown, DeAndre Smith, and Orlando Anderson. Based on our investigation, this is where we know they were seated. At some point in time, as they were in the white Cadillac, Mr. Davis took the gun that he had obtained and provided it to the passengers in the rear seat of the vehicle. As they were driving west on Flamingo Road near Koval, they had located the black BMW, which was driven by Suge Knight, and in the passenger seat was Tupac Shakur. And as they turned around, they pulled up near the passenger side of that vehicle and immediately began shooting at Mr. Knight and Mr. Shakur. Following that shooting, the white Cadillac fled the area southbound on Koval, and after our officers arrived on scene, Tupac was later transported to the University Medical Center, where he was treated medically and died approximately 6 days later on September 13th. My homicide section handled this investigation from its onset and for a short amount of time. And within a short amount of time, what we knew was that we were working a gang investigation where our victims, our witnesses, and our suspects were all from Southern California and not local to Las Vegas. Within the first few months of the investigation, our detectives knew most of the information I just briefed you on. However, we never had the necessary evidence to bring this case forward and present it for criminal charges. As time went on, this case had been reviewed multiple times by different investigators assigned to my section, but it wasn't until 2018 that this case was reinvigorated as additional information came to light related to this homicide. Specifically, Dwayne Davis's own admissions to his involvement in this homicide investigation that he provided to numerous different media outlets. In our section, we knew at this time that this was likely our last time to take a run at this case to successfully solve this case and bring forth a criminal charge. It was at that time that this case was assigned to Cliff Mogg, a detective within my homicide section. And over the last 5 years, my section worked closely, hand in hand with the Clark County District Attorney's Office and followed a systematic investigative plan over the last 5 years. We've conducted countless interviews and corroborated numerous facts that were not only consistent with the crime scene on the night of the incident, but also corroborated and were consistent with the sequence of events that night. This ultimately led to us procuring a search warrant which was executed at Mr. Davis's residence in Henderson, Nevada. And following the execution of that search warrant, in close coordination with the District Attorney's Office, this case was presented to the grand jury, which ultimately led to Davis being indicted on charges of murder. Before I hand it off to the District Attorney's Office, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Detective Mogg and all the other detectives that were not only assigned this case and reviewed this case, but all the other detectives from other agencies that assisted us in this investigation. They know who they are, and thank you very much for all the assistance you provided. It does not go unnoticed. And lastly, one of the most important things, in my opinion, is we need to make this be a reminder that the charge of murder does not have a statute of limitations. This agency has been and is invested in solving our cold case homicides so that we can bring closure to those families and justice for those victims of homicide. And with that, I will turn it over to the Clark County District Attorney, Steve Wilson.
Thank you, Lieutenant Johansson. I appreciate it. Good afternoon. I am the Las Vegas Clark County District Attorney Steve Wolfson. It has often been said, justice delayed is justice denied. It's a quote we hear often and for many, many years when talking about our legal system, but not in this case. Today, justice will be served in the murder of Tupac Shakur. I'd like to acknowledge the relentless work of the many Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department homicide detectives. We've mentioned Detective Cliff Mogg many times, and we can't mention his name enough. He is the detective, along with his colleagues, that brought this case here today to you. A Clark County grand jury has indicted Dwayne Keith Davis with 1 count of open murder with use of a deadly weapon with a gang enhancement. Davis will appear in court in the next few days or so for a hearing to determine his custody status and to set a jury trial date. This grand jury has been receiving evidence for months and has determined there is sufficient evidence to justify the filing of this criminal indictment. I've assigned 2 of my top prosecutors, Mark DiGiacomo and Banu Palal, to prosecute this case. I know a lot of people have been watching and waiting for this day. Tupac Shakur is a music legend, and for a long time, this community and worldwide have been wanting justice for Tupac. Today, we are taking that first step. Tupac was actually quoted as saying, "Death is not the greatest loss in life. The greatest loss is what dies inside while still alive. Never surrender." Well, we didn't surrender thanks to the great work of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department under the leadership of Sheriff Kevin McMahill, Lieutenant Johansson, retired Detective Cliff Mogg. I am proud to announce the return of this document. This is the indictment we've been waiting almost 3 decades for. It spells out the facts and circumstances and what justifies a Clark County grand jury in returning an indictment. Justice will be served. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'd just like to say that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department Homicide Section year over year solves over 90% of the homicides that occur in our jurisdiction. You won't find that anywhere else in the United States. For those family members that have lost somebody that we haven't solved that case, I want you to know, just like in this case, we're not going to give up. I also say to you that as we begin, we're going to take a couple of questions. I want you to remember in your questioning that this investigation, subsequent arrest, and now indictment is only the beginning of the process. And we are committed and invested in ensuring a successful prosecution as we move forward. So with that, we'll take any questions that you might have. Ken?
Excuse me, Sheriff, thank you. Have you been in touch with the Shakur family, anyone within here today? And if so, can you characterize what they told you?
The family has reached out to my office. I imagine also to Metro. We've been in communication with them. We understand that they are welcoming this news. They are pleased with this news, and they are certainly aware of the return of this indictment.
Do you anticipate them being at court for arraignment of Mr. Davis?
I don't think they'll be at the arraignment. I mean, that's a relatively short hearing, but I know that they'll be involved. I know that they'll want to be apprised of what goes on a frequent basis.
Back.
Could you talk about any of the statements that you made that piqued your curiosity again or got you back into this case?
Jason, you want to answer that? We're not going to talk about any particular statements, but maybe he can address that globally.
What I'll say is there's a lot that's going to come out when it comes time for trial, but he provides his own series of statements that are very consistent with the evidence that we have on the scene that we've obtained through our investigation. I'll leave it at that.
Can you identify anything that came from the service of the warrant in July that you didn't know before?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I'll say about the search warrant that we did in July, that we obtained information or evidence during that execution of that search warrant that corroborated information obtained through our investigation, and I'll leave it at that until we go to trial.
Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Tiffany Lane with Channel 3. So I know that this was obviously a big move. Is there anyone else being looked at this point? I know a lot of people have passed away since this incident, but is anyone else being looked at as part of this investigation still?
So as I stated earlier, In this case, the only living suspect related to this investigation is Dwayne Davis. All other 3 suspects are deceased.
Vanessa?
Thank you. Vanessa Murphy, Channel 8. Steve, can you talk about the murder charge if he is not the one believed to have pulled the trigger?
Yes, well, under Nevada law, and this is the law in most states in this country, you can be charged with a crime whether you're directly involved or whether you're an aider and abettor. We have an aiding and abetting statute, which provides that if you help somebody commit a crime, you can be equally as guilty. The best example is 2 guys that agree to commit a bank robbery, and one of them goes into the bank with a gun and actually commits the robbery, and the other guy is the getaway driver. Never went in the bank, but he assisted the guy that went in the bank, so he's equally guilty. That is one of the theories in this case as well.
Last question.
Do investigators believe that Davis was the only person behind the plan to kill Tupac, or was he one of multiple people who came up with this plan?
I think the best way to characterize that is Dwayne Davis was the shot caller for this group of individuals that committed this crime, and he orchestrated the plan that was carried out to commit this crime.
And can you say how he obtained the gun or who he obtained it from?
We know that he obtained it from a close associate. That a lot of the actual details of who specifically, all that come out at trial, but he obtained it from a close associate of his.
Thank you for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can you say if Davis has said anything since his arrest?
Live from the Stream Center, breaking news on WFLA Now. Here's JB Buno.
Tupac's murder, an act of retaliation, police say, for an assault that had occurred earlier that night, as Dwayne Keefe D. Davis has been indicted by a Nevada grand jury in the murder of the hip-hop legend. We're breaking down, of course, the press conference that we just heard from Las Vegas. Getting to some of your comments here live on WFLA Now. Welcome back into the Stream Center, folks. We were just listening in from Las Vegas, learned a lot, jotting down a lot of notes, but very interesting question there towards the end, that the evidence that was gathered back over the course of the summer when they executed the search warrant, that the evidence that they took corroborated what they had gathered over the course of that investigation, the investigation into Tupac's murder going back 27 years ago. So that, of course, is a very interesting nugget of information that things are basically that had lined up for investigators to proceed with the arrest, and now the Nevada grand jury proceeding with the indictment. KVD will be in court for an arraignment next week after being taken in by Las Vegas authorities in a case that does not have to abide by any statute of limitations. That's a very interesting note as well. And of course, different jurisdictions, different states are going to have statute of limitations. But in this case, according to the press conference that we just had, no statute of limitations that bar investigators from proceeding with an arrest in this case. And they say that they know who the 4-person crew was that was responsible for gunning down Tupac that night in Las Vegas. And the only one that is still alive is Dwayne Davis, also known as Keefe D, who, again, will be making his first court appearance on this next week when the arraignment actually takes place. The charge is murder with use of a deadly weapon. For the 1996 murder, the drive-by shooting. And again, it was a good explanation there, and it helped us all out to understand the murder charge, even though, you're not, even if you don't pull the trigger on the gun yourself, if you are involved in the murder in any capacity, according to law enforcement, then you can be charged with that same crime. And so murder with use of a deadly weapon is the charge. And while I don't have it in front of me based on Nevada, law. I don't know exactly what the potential penalty would be based on a conviction. Keefe D is, I believe, 60 years old. And the chances are that based on a conviction, he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. We got a lot of folks joining us here on Facebook Live, on YouTube Live. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, go over what you guys are saying out there, just your overall general reaction. I'm just really curious to hear what you guys have to say. This is, again, 27 years in the making. Talk about a cold case. This might be one of the most famous, notorious is probably a word that could be used as well. Cold cases in modern U.S. history. Also, of course, pertaining to the death of Biggie Smalls, Notorious B.I.G., just a year later. Talking about some really famous cold cases. If you looked at lists online of some of the most famous cold cases ever, no doubt Tupac Shakur and that murder, the murder of Tupac, would be on that list. And so, look, there are people in our comment section. I was reading your comments over the course of the presser, people who were clearly emotional over this, saying that that this is decades in the making, a day that they had prayed for, a day where, at least police have narrowed their focus and provided the public with some, semblance of answers. And so getting to this point is relieving news for a lot of folks out there. Let's go to some of the comments, questions that are coming in. If you use hashtag HeyJB, our comment feature of displaying comments on screen is apparently it's bugging out for some reason. But I'll try to read as many comments here as possible. It was a Mike Tyson. Which Mike Tyson fight was it? I'm a boxing fan, so I'm trying to remember which fight it was with Mike Tyson. September 7th, 1996. That was fight. Bruce Seldon was the fight. September 7th, 1996 at the MGM Grand, put on by Don King Promotions. And there was, of course, the altercation. They played the video with Orlando Baby Lane Anderson at the casino. That was captured on surveillance video, and police saying, of course, that the murder of Tupac is an act of retaliation after Dwayne Davis, Keefy D, was able to, according to investigators, secure a firearm and carry out the act of retaliation later on that night. Ruben's Watching has this question and says, hashtag HeyJB, why did this take 27 years? You know what's interesting? You have to wonder that 2010 meeting with Keefy D and authorities, and we'll go back to my notes here and we'll talk about this, that 2010 initial meeting 13 years ago. You have to wonder are we here today having this live stream? Are we here today with this press conference if it wasn't for that sort of rolling the snowball down the hill, so to speak, getting things started? Because that meeting is what really set the stage for law enforcement to at least, officially proceed in their investigation of Davis. Davis wrote in his memoir that it was back in 2010 that he had a closed-door meeting with, this is, again, talking about Keefy D and federal and local authorities in Nevada. That was the first time that they had come face-to-face regarding this. And at the time, Keefy D was 46 years old. He was facing life in prison at the time for drug charges. He agreed to speak with the federal and local authorities and regarding Tupac's death, and he was also willing to comment as well on the fatal shooting that had occurred 6 months later with of course Notorious B.I.G. And here's again the quote, and I want to read this quote. They offered to let me go for running a criminal enterprise and numerous alleged murders for the truth about Tupac and Biggie's murders. They promised they would shred the indictment and stop the grand jury if I helped them out. And so there was this conversation that took place. And that, of course, is considered to be a pivotal part. And you heard some questions asked about some of the conversations that had taken place between law enforcement and Keefy D. You heard that there in the press conference. So that is considered to be a massive turning point. It should be noted as well that we have to, Orlando Anderson, and perhaps, look, I don't know if the Anderson family has found, if they're on the internet today, in light of this press conference. But we have to talk about Baby Lane Anderson, because Davis implicated him, saying that he was one of the two people in the back seat, and Anderson would go on to continuously deny any involvement in Tupac's death up until Anderson's death. So a lot of moving parts here, but Keefe D is the only one who remains alive, and of the four people in that SUV that night. So that's why we have charges against Keefe D, and that's why he will be in court next week for the arraignment. What are you guys saying out there? What's sort of the reaction? You can use, again, hashtag KJB if you're trying to get my attention. They kind of are just a little bit brighter on my screen. People, saying, that they were convinced, talking about, who pulled the trigger on the firearm. Yeah, people talking about where, the firearm exactly came from. Has the mugshot been officially posted yet, you guys? That's another thing. Yeah, folks, if you're just joining us, people are asking, did I miss the presser? Yes, the presser wrapped up about 6 or 7 minutes ago. Yeah, seeing a lot of comments coming in with hashtag KJB, and people mentioning a lot of names in our comment section. Okay, let's take this. I want to just grab this because this is from the press conference. So let me just give me a moment here, folks. I'm going to bring in the image from the presser. Let's see here. Here we go. So that's from the presser. So this is his official mugshot. We screen grabbed this from the press conference. I'm sure that the mugshot itself is out there somewhere, being officially posted by Las Vegas authorities. But there you have it. We'll spend another few minutes here on the live stream. Try to do our very best to answer, as many questions as we can. Again, yeah, people asking, what is the name of the suspect? It's right there. Dwayne Davis, also known as Keefe D. People asking about a trial. It depends on his plea. It depends on if he enters a plea of guilty or not guilty. And not sure. I mean, I would imagine that the expectation is that Keefe D would plead not guilty to have, of course, his day in court, and that, yeah, this could go to trial. People asking when a trial could be. I'm not going to pretend to have any idea as to what the court sort of logs look like in Nevada these days. But I will say this, look, 2024 is shaping up to be a pretty big year as far as court cases, right? You've got potentially the Idaho case regarding Brian Kohberger. We know that we're going to get the Gabby Petito, lawsuit trial that's going to be happening in May, and this one could be added to the list. Could be a very significant year for court cases. I know people here on, I'm sure in our comment section, whether you're here on YouTube Live or Facebook Live, people who are fascinated by trials, especially high-profile trials, and going back, of course, to Johnny Depp, Amber Heard, cases where people can really just witness how our legal system works. If Dwayne Davis pleads not guilty, then we're looking at a scenario where it could go to trial next year. Of course, Dwayne Davis has a right to a speedy trial, and it could, depending what people always have to remember is that what changes everything regarding a trial is whether or not a judge and whether or not judicial policy for that jurisdiction is going to permit cameras in the courtroom. And then if cameras are permitted, will live streaming be permitted? For example, Idaho, we've talked about this on previous streams, cameras are allowed in the courtroom, but you can't stream out of the courtroom. So then all that video is presentable later, and then it gets dumped afterwards. So there is some, look, could this trial be televised / live streamed? I'd have to check on what the sort of judicial policy is in Las Vegas. Yeah, a lot of folks joining us. Just, man, just taking a moment. Think about the countless, like, I don't want to say countless. There's many documentaries that have been done about Tupac's death and about the mystery, the questions, the conspiracy theories that exist, all of the secrecy surrounding the people involved or said to be involved, and how no one was talking, and it was just to get to a point 27 years later, and then all of a sudden this search warrant gets executed in Las Vegas. There's momentum. Police are have new life in their investigation, and then to proceed with an arrest and to have this indictment. My goodness. Yeah, I'm very curious to know what friends, family members, of course, of Tupac, what the response is going to be. I'm sure people are going to be, look, innocent until proven guilty, and Dwayne Davis has, of course, his right to a trial, and of course, there's so much that we are still to learn. We're very, as to sort of echo what law enforcement said, we're very early on in this process, but this is going to come across as comforting news to many people who were really impacted by this case, people that were very, very closely associated with this case. So, yeah, this day is real. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. This is not a figment of your imagination. You're not dreaming. This is real. 27 years later, we have an arrest and an indictment in the drive-by murder of Tupac Shakur. What other comments do we have? Again, use hashtag KJB. Our comment widget to spotlight comments on screen, it's just not working for some reason. We'll have to fix that off stream. Looking here. Peanut says, hashtag KJB, do you think that maybe if Suge Knight had have spoken up during his murder trial, who actually killed Tupac, would he, well, I'm still reading it, would he still be in jail or serve half of his time right now? It's not just about, it doesn't matter who it is. It's not just about providing information or providing a name, but providing something that law enforcement can use. When you have these meetings with law enforcement and they say, okay, what do you have to offer us? It's not just, pointing at a name. You can say any name. You have to be able to provide law enforcement with something legal, something tangible that can be used in a court of law that they can use to proceed with a search warrant or an arrest warrant or an indictment. So without answering the question directly, that's the big thing to remember is that when somebody sitting down and saying, I think this person did it, doesn't really have much of an official, we can say, sort of impact on a case, unless there's something tangible that can be presented and given to law enforcement that they can use, the district attorney's office that they can use to proceed with the case. Ibrahim says, or Ibrahim, excuse me, #KJB, wasn't he a prime suspect and was taken in for questioning several times over the last 27 years? Yes, there's been back and forth conversations, as we have talked about on this live stream with Keefe D and in regards to this case. That's why one of the first things I said on this live stream is that as far as who was indicted in Tupac's murder today, the name isn't going to come to as much of a surprise. This is the name that has been at the top of just about every list because, of course, of the memoir that Dwayne Davis put out there, of course, about him confirming that he was in the SUV that night. So if there was going to be a name that was going to, if it had been a different name other than Dwayne Davis, if it had been someone other than Keefe D, I think there would have been even the level of shock in circles surrounding this case, especially, would have been off the charts. This is the name that documentaries. I've seen a couple, not too many years back. I had seen a couple of there's some great YouTube videos specifically about Tupac's murder, and this is a name that if you have studied the murder of Tupac Shakur, this is a name that everyone knows. Keefe D, everyone knows it. So. Karen says Davis even wrote in his memoir about, discussing his involvement. That's mind-blowing. Can his words be used against him in a court of law? Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. Can his memoir be submitted as evidence and read out at trial? And of course, if yeah, absolutely. What was the name of the memoir again? I want to bring up my notes here. It was Compton Street Legend. That was the name of the memoir. Let's see. What's it going for on Amazon? Compton Street Legend by Keefe D with Yusuf Jah. Compton Street Legend is the paperback on Amazon Prime for $19.95. It is a book that, according to Amazon here, it's just a Google search, you guys, came out on April 8th, 2019. I'll read just a little bit of the description here. The infamous Suge Knight, former Death Row Records CEO, and I are the only living eyewitnesses to the deadly confrontation on the Las Vegas Strip between the occupants of our two vehicles. A violent confrontation that led to the deaths of two of hip-hop's biggest stars, Tupac Shakur and Christopher Notorious B.I.G. Wallace, and changed hip-hop history forever. There's a street code on the streets, one that real street players live, kill, and die by. Compton Street Legend reveals the street-level code violations and explosive consequences when the powerful worlds of the streets, entertainment, and corrupt law enforcement collide. It's quite the description on a book. And we were talking a little bit about that earlier, about how there was such a wall that was up for law enforcement regarding this case because so many people obviously were, never going to speak to law enforcement and were never going to corroborate or I should say rather cooperate with law enforcement in any regard, given, of course, the retaliation that would exist if somebody was exposed. If someone had spoken to law enforcement and given out details to law enforcement, that would, of course, in that world and at the time in the 90s, of course, would be, my goodness, the implications would be would be severe. The ramifications would be massive. You'd probably have to watch your back. If you had information regarding Tupac or Biggie's murders and word had gotten out anywhere that you had a conversation with law enforcement, you'd be looking over your shoulder. There's no doubt. I know Suge Knight's incarcerated. I know he's behind bars, right? So, or did he get out? I'm trying to remember. I don't remember. I think he's still locked up, right? Yeah, Suge Knight is behind bars. For some reason, I thought I got mixed up there. Interesting. Well, back here in the Stream Center, welcome in. We're going to spend another couple minutes on the live stream. Anything and everything is on the table. Any questions that you guys have, we're going to spend another 2 to 3 minutes on the live stream. Happy Friday, wherever you're watching from. East Coast, West Coast. Not much of a rivalry much anymore. That was very much something that existed in the 90s, but West Coast and East Coast these days, apparently, can't we all just get along, right? The whole mantra, of course. Our country is divisive in other ways right now, not necessarily West Coast versus East Coast feuds. It's a whole other set of circumstances surrounding that. But yes, wherever you are joining us from, happy Friday to you. Welcome into the Stream Center. It's just me in here today, even though we have our very talented Max Fender 8 weather team not too far away, located over here on this side of the room. Hi, Jeff. How are you? Val, you guys doing okay over there? Yep. They now know everything about Tupac and Biggie. If you guys use hashtag AJB, I can just kind of read your questions and comment. Yeah. So, oh, yeah. Mrs. McGuire saying Suge Knight not eligible for parole until October of 2034. Yeah, he's going to be up there in age at that point. People were sharing their favorite. This is very much today. A day where, people were commenting back and forth before the live stream began. I saw some people talking about their favorite Tupac songs. Anybody have a favorite Tupac song? Tupac's influence on hip hop, no doubt, is. He changed hip hop forever. Anyone have some favorite Tupac songs? Favorite Tupac songs, you guys? California Love is the one that gets all the play, I know, but that's yours, Val? Okay. Jeff, you don't have a favorite Tupac song? Well, yeah. Changes, of course, is a very a song that a lot of people know. California Love is a song a lot of people know. Yeah, I listen to Biggie a little bit more, but that was me. Born a Unicorn says 2 of America's Most Wanted. Team Brittany says So Many Tears. V says, can you recap for those of us just tuning in? If you want to recap, go to WFLA.com. But really quickly, Dwayne Keefe D. Davis has been indicted on murder with use of a deadly weapon in the drive-by murder of Tupac Shakur in 1996. He will be arraigned next week. That's the quick recap, you guys. Ruby Pearl says, my favorite is Dear Mama. Oh, yeah, some great Tupac songs out there. Looking here on Spotify. And all right, last call for comments. If you are looking for the press conference, you can find it, of course, by just going back in this video. It ended about 25 minutes ago. Facebook Live, Janet says California love. Jay says hit him up. People still listen to Tupac, man. And again, he was so young. He had a very large music library for somebody that was so unbelievably young. He's 25 years old when he died. Think about that. 25. I always forget too, Tupac, he had suffered multiple gunshot wounds in the drive-by. And he held on, I think it was about a week. And I have heard from people that there was a lot of that was an extremely tense time because, word had gotten out that obviously it was a major news story at the time. And then it was about a week later that he had succumbed to his injuries. Yeah, the rapper's death came as his fourth solo album. All Eyes on Me remained on the charts with about 5 million copies sold. He was nominated 6 times for a Grammy Award. He is still largely considered one of the most influential and versatile rappers of all time. I'll read this. Greg Kading, a retired LA police detective who had spent years investigating the Tupac murder and then went on to write a book about it, said that he wasn't surprised at all by Davis's arrest. He said that he believed the investigation gained new momentum in recent years following Davis's public descriptions of his role in the killing, including in his 2019 memoir. The quote from Kading, "It's those events that have given Las Vegas the ammunition and the leverage to move forward. Prior to Keefe D's public declarations, the cases were unprosecutable as they stood." What that translates to is that Keefe D opening his mouth and talking about it as much as he did is the reason that he, of course, that basically gave law enforcement what they needed to proceed with charges in this case, or the charge, I should say, rather, in this case. Absolutely wild that his memoir, again, Compton Street Legend, I'm looking at it here on Amazon, that his memoir, the book that he wrote, where he talks a lot about, of course, the night that Tupac died and his, his role or his involvement or his knowledge of it, if you will, that is what gave investigators what they needed to proceed. I mean, again, that's the opinion of a investigator who worked extensively on the case. That's not from law enforcement, but still massively consequential as far as the case. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here on WFLA Now. I really appreciate you finding our live stream. You can also click on the link in the description on this video if you're looking for more on this story. Really appreciate wherever you're watching from. Really quickly, shout out before we wrap up, where are you guys watching from? Anybody watching from Los Angeles, Las Vegas? I'll just shout out some locations. Are folks watching internationally? Are there Tupac fans that are joining us from other countries internationally? Hope everyone's having a good Friday, September 29th, as we wrap up our live stream. Let's see here. We've got Jennifer's joining from Ohio, Wally from New York, Karen from Ontario, Canada. There's a little bit of international. Gladys says, I'm here. California Love joining us from California. Led Zeppelin Girl says from Albuquerque, New Mexico. Berlin. Wow. Yeah, they're coming in really fast now. Wow. Kaz of Bears joining us from Scotland. Karen Lee is joining us from North Carolina. Houston, Texas says Natasha Newsom. Victory says Central Florida. Kimara says Flint, Michigan. Wow. Thanks so much for joining us here on WFLA Now. Again, you can click on the link in the description of this video. It'll take you over to our article where we're updating that article with more information on this story. Hope everybody has a happy, healthy, safe weekend out there, folks. And we'll see you next time when we live stream once again here on WFLA Now. We'll see you next time, folks, from the Stream Center, from our entire team. Have a good one. Take care.